Out. Now. The words cut through the office like glass shattering. Everything stopped. Keyboards froze mid-typing. Phones hovered in the air. Even the quiet hum of the air conditioning seemed to fade behind the tension that suddenly filled the room. A man in a tailored navy suit stood near the center of the office, his jaw tight, fingers clenched around another man's arm. "You heard me," he snapped, louder this time. "You don't belong here." The man he was gripping didn't fight back. He didn't even pull away. He stood still, solid, grounded, like he had roots beneath his feet instead of worn-out boots. Those boots, they were the first thing people noticed. Dust clung to them. Dry, pale dirt pressed into the creases. With every small shift of his weight, faint marks smudged across the polished marble floor. And the agent Daniel Reeves noticed that more than anything. His lip curled. "Look at this," Daniel said, dragging the man forward a step, pointing sharply at the floor. "You are making a mess in a place you can't even afford to stand in." A few quiet chuckles slipped from somewhere behind the glass desks. Not loud, not bold, but enough to sting. The man being held broad-shouldered, calm-eyed, finally shifted his gaze, not to Daniel, to the room. He looked at everyone, one by one. Slowly, people looked away. Some pretended to be busy. Others leaned back in their chairs, whispering under their breath. A woman near the corner hesitated, her brows tightening. Slightly, but she said nothing. No one said anything. Daniel let out a short, sharp laugh. "You walked in here like you had business," he said, tightening his grip and pulling harder now. "Like you could just ask about million-dollar properties." The man's body moved with the force, but there was no panic in it, no resistance, just control. "You think this is a joke?" Daniel continued. "You think we've got time to entertain fantasies?" The man finally spoke. His voice was low. Asked a question. That was it. No anger, no pleading, just a statement. And somehow, that made it worse. Daniel's expression hardened. His pride flared sharp and immediate. "A question?" He scoffed. "You call that a question?" Walking in here dressed like that, he stopped himself, but the damage was already done. His eyes dropped again to the boots, then to the faded denim, then back up. "You're wasting my time." And the silence grew heavier. Somewhere, a pen dropped onto task with a soft click, but no one reacted to it. Daniel exhaled sharply, as if he'd had enough. "Out," he said, and this time he didn't wait. He grabbed the man's arm again firmer, more aggressive, and began pulling him toward the glass doors at the front of the office. The sound of boots dragging across marble echoed louder than it should have. Each step left faint streaks behind. Each step stretched the moment thinner, longer, uncomfortable. The man's body moved, but his posture didn't. Collapse. His shoulders stayed level. His head stayed upright. His eyes kept moving, watching, noticing, remembering. They passed rows of desk agents frozen mid-motion, clients caught between curiosity and discomfort. A man in a gray suit shifted awkwardly in his chair, pretending to check his watch. Another leaned in, whispering something that made his colleagues smirk. Still, no one stepped in. No one said stop. Daniel pushed the door open with his shoulder. The glass swung wide, letting in a sharp slice of sunlight that cut across the floor. "Go," Daniel said, giving one final shove. The man stumbled forward slightly, his boot catching the edge of the entrance. For a brief second, it looked like he might fall, but he didn't. He steadied himself, and outside, the street noise rushed in, cars passing, distant voices, the world continuing like nothing had happened. Behind him, inside the office, the silence remained. Daniel stood at the doorway, breathing a little heavier now, brushing his hands together like he'd just handled something dirty. "Unbelievable," he muttered under his breath, loud enough for others to hear. "People really think they can just walk in anywhere." A few nervous laughs followed. Weak, uncertain, but still there. The man outside didn't walk away immediately. He paused, just for a second. Then slowly, he turned his head. Not his whole body, just enough to look back through the glass. His eyes met the room again. Calm, unshaken. There was no anger in them, no embarrassment, no rush to leave. Just something quiet, something steady, something that didn't match what had just happened. Daniel noticed it, and for a split second, something flickered across his face. Confusion. It disappeared just as quickly. Snapped. "You got something else to say?" The man held his gaze. A breath passed, then another, and then he spoke, softly. "You might want to remember this moment." No emphasis, no threat, just words. But they didn't land lightly. They hung there, strange, out of place. Before anyone could respond, the man turned and walked away. No hurry, no hesitation. Just steady steps down the sidewalk, fading into the movement of the street. The glass door slowly swung shut behind him. Click! Inside, the office exhaled. Chairs shifted. Screens lit back up. Conversations restarted quieter at first, then louder, as if trying to cover what had just happened. Daniel adjusted his cuffs, smoothing out invisible wrinkles in his sleeve. "Unreal," he said, shaking his head as he walked back in. "Every day it's something." Someone chuckled. Another voice added, "You handled that well, Ja." Daniel replied quickly, "You have to. Otherwise they think they can just..." He stopped mid-sentence. Not because he ran out of words, because something felt off. It was faint, barely noticeable, but it lingered, like the echo of something unfinished. Across the room, the woman in the corner, Maya, was still, tottering at the door, her brows slightly drawn, her fingers resting motionless on her keyboard. She hadn't laughed, she hadn't looked away. And now, she couldn't shake the feeling that what just walked out of that office wasn't what everyone thought it was. Something about him didn't fit, not the way they assumed, not the way Daniel believed. And somehow, that quiet line, "You might want to remember this moment," didn't sound like a warning. It sounded like a promise. The sun hit harder outside, hot, unforgiving. It reflected off the glass buildings lining the street, turning everything into sharp light and shadows. The kind of place where people walked fast, talked faster, and judged in seconds. Elijah Carter stepped into it without hesitation. No rush, no anger, just steady movement. His boots met the pavement with a dull, grounded sound. Each step carried the same quiet rhythm as before, controlled, measured. Like nothing inside that office had touched him, but people noticed. Always did. A man in a crisp white shirt slowed slightly as he passed, his eyes flicking down boots, jeans, shirt, then back up with a quick, dismissive glance. A woman holding a leather handbag tightened her grip just a little as Elijah walked by, her lips pressing into a thin line. No one said anything. They didn't have to. Elijah kept walking. His gaze stayed forward, not avoiding, not confronting. Just focused. Traffic moved beside him. A black sedan rolled past its tinted windows, reflecting his figure for a brief second before disappearing. In that reflection, he looked exactly how they saw him. Simple, out of place. But the way he carried himself told a different story. He stopped at the curb, waiting as the signal blinked red. Across the street, more glass. More steel. More people who looked like they belonged. Behind him, the real estate office stood tall and polished, like nothing had happened inside. Elijah didn't turn back. Not yet. The light changed. He stepped outward. Halfway across, his hand slipped into his pocket, not nervously, not searching, just reaching. He pulled out a folded piece of paper, worn at the edges but handled with care. His eyes dropped to it for a brief second as he walked. Numbers, details, a printed header near the top. Property listing, not just any property. A large commercial space, prime location, high value. The kind of place that required more than just interest. It required access, knowledge, money. He folded it back, slowly sliding it into his pocket again. A car honked in the distance. Someone shouted. The city moved on. Elijah reached the other side and continued down the sidewalk. A few steps later, he stopped beside an old pickup truck parked between two polished cars that didn't belong in the same frame as it. The truck looked used, not broken, not neglected, just worked. Dust lined its edges. The paint had lost its shine years ago, but it stood solid, like it had never failed the man who drove it. Elijah reached for the handle, paused for just a second, then opened the door. The inside carried the faint smell of leather and earth, familiar, grounded, real. He sat down, closing the door behind him with a firm click. Silence settled around him, different from the office silence. This one wasn't heavy. It was calm. His hand moved to the steering wheel but didn't turn the key yet. Instead, his eyes shifted to the passenger seat. A stack of folders rested there, neatly arranged, clean, of place in the best way. Each one labeled, not handwritten, printed, sharp, professional. Logos stamped across the top corners, companies, partnerships, legal headers. The kind of documents that didn't come easy. The kind people didn't carry around unless they knew exactly what they were doing. Elijah reached over, picking up the top folder. He opened it halfway. Inside, contracts, figures, structured pages filled with precise information. His thumb pressed lightly against the paper, flipping it odd. Then another. His eyes scanned quickly, for the first time, reviewing. Bang, he closed it again. Moment, he just sat there. Still. Then he leaned back slightly, exhaling not out of frustration but out of thought. Outside, footsteps passed. Voices blended into the background. Inside, everything was quiet. Elijah's gaze lifted. through the windshield, across the street, and then slowly back toward the building behind him, the same glass walls, the same doors. From this angle it looked smaller, less intimidating, almost ordinary. His eyes narrowed slightly, not in anger but in focus, like he was placing a piece in a larger puzzle. Inside the office, things had already shifted. Daniel leaned against the edge of a desk, arms loosely crossed, retelling the moment like it was just another story. "I'm telling you," he said, a smirk still lingering on his face. "You can spot it in seconds. The way they walk in, the questions they ask, it's obvious." A colleague nodded. "Yeah, you handled it quick." Daniel shrugged, casual. "No point wasting time. If they're not serious, they're not serious." He reached for a glass of water, taking a slow sip, completely at ease. Across the room, Maya didn't move. Her screen was on. Numbers filled it. Emails, client requests. But her eyes weren't really seeing any of it. They drifted again toward the door. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. Still, something about that moment kept replaying in her head. Not the shouting, not the dragging, but the silence, the way he didn't react, the way he looked around the room, not confused, not intimidated, aware, like he was taking notes. Maya blinked, pulling her attention back to her screen. She clicked into the system, scrolled, a thought forming, then hesitating, then pushing forward anyway. He typed a name. Slowly, Elijah Carter. For a second, nothing happened. Then the system loaded. Her eyes narrowed slightly. A file appeared. I kicked it. The screen shifted, and just like that, her expression changed. Back in the truck, Elijah finally turned the key. The engine started without hesitation. A low, steady rumble. Reliable. He adjusted his grip on the wheel, glancing one last time at the folders beside him, then forward again. His face remained calm, unbothered. But beneath that calm, something was moving, not reaction, not emotion, strategy. The truck pulled away from the curb, merging into the flow of the city. Just like that, he was gone. But not finished. The road stretched long and empty ahead of him. City noise faded behind, replaced by something quieter, steadier. The hum of the engine, the wind brushing past the windows. The kind of silence that didn't press on you, it moved with you. Elijah drove without turning on the radio. He never needed it. His hands rested firm on the wheel, fingers relaxed, eyes steady on the road. But his mind wasn't in the present anymore. It drifted. Everything started. The sun wasn't soft where he came from. It rose sharp, bright, unforgiving, and it didn't wait for anyone. A younger Elijah stood in a field, his shirt already sticking to his back before the day had fully begun. The soil beneath his boots was dry, cracked in places, stubborn in others. He gripped a rusted tool, trying to fix a piece of equipment that looked older than he was. It wouldn't cooperate. It never did on the first try. He tightened something, tested it. Nothing. A breath escaped him, not frustration, just focus. He tried again. Behind him, slow footsteps approached, measured, heavy, familiar. "You rushing it again?" Elijah didn't turn. "No," he said, adjusting his grip. "Just trying to get it working." A low chuckle came from behind him. "That's the same thing." Now Elijah looked back. His grandfather stood a few steps away, leaning slightly on a wooden cane, eyes sharp despite the years behind them. His face carried lines carved by time, but there was strength in them. Not weakness, never weakness. "Come here," the old man said. Elijah hesitated for a second, then stepped away from the machine. His grandfather moved closer to it, crouching slowly, inspecting it with quiet patience. "See this?" he said, tapping a small bent piece of metal. "You're forcing it." Elijah frowned slightly. "It's stuck, because it's not meant to move that way." The old man adjusted it gently. Not with strength, but with understanding. A slight shift, a small click. On, he stepped back. "Try now." Elijah stepped forward again, gripping the tool. One turn. Like it had never been stuck at all. He paused, looking at it. Then back at his grandfather. "How did you? Because I've seen it before," the old man said, cutting him off calmly. "That's the difference." He straightened up slowly, resting both hands on the cane. "People think everything is about strength," he continued, "about pushing harder, louder, faster." His eyes met Elijah's. "But it's not. A beat passed. It's about knowing what you're dealing with." The wind moved lightly across the field. Dust lifted, then settled again. Elijah looked down at the machine, then back at his grandfather. "And if you don't know?" he asked. The old man's lips curved slightly, not quite a smile, but close. "Then you learn," he said, quietly. Days blurred into weeks, weeks into years. The fields didn't change much. The work didn't get easier, but Elijah did. He woke before the sun. Worked through heat that made the air feel heavy. fixed what broke, carried what needed carrying. And when the day ended, when most would sit, rest, or complain, Elijah didn't stop. He listened, learned. Inside a small, worn house at the edge of the land, a different kind of work happened. Papers spread across a wooden table, old books stacked in corners, numbers written, erased, written again. Elijah sat there late into the night, a dim light above him, flipping through pages that had nothing to do with soil, but everything to do with value. Land pricing, market shifts, agricultural demand. He didn't fully understand it at first, but he didn't rush it. He studied the way he worked the fields, patient. His grandfather would pass by sometimes, pausing just long enough to glance at the papers, never interrupting, just observing. Until one night he finally spoke. "People will judge what they see," he said, standing in the doorway. Elijah didn't look up immediately. He finished the line he was reading, then turned. His grandfather stepped inside slowly, eyes moving across the table. "All this," he said, gesturing lightly. "They won't see it." Elijah nodded once. "I know." The old man studied him for a moment longer. Then he said the words that stayed with him. "Let them." Silence filled the room. "What matters," his grandfather continued, "is what they don't see." Years passed. The land changed. Not all at once. Not in ways that made noise, but in ways that mattered. Sections that once struggled began producing more. Unused areas turned into opportunity. Elijah didn't expand loudly. He didn't announce anything. He just moved, one decision at a time. He met people quietly, spoke less than he listened, asked questions others didn't think to ask. And when he made a move, it was already thought through, calculated, secure. Partnerships formed, not flashy ones, smart ones. He invested in land others overlooked. Arias, iced as not worth it. He saw something different, potential. Time proved him right, slowly, and all at once. What started as survival turned into growth. What looked small became something structured, something real. But Elijah never changed how he showed up. Same boots, same calm presence, same quiet way of moving through rooms. Because the outside was never the point. The truck rolled to a stop. The memory faded. The present returned. Elijah sat inside, engine now off, the ticking. Sound of metal cooling filling the silence. The folders were still there, waiting. He reached over again, pulling one closer. Opened it. This time his eyes stayed longer. Pages turned slowly, each one carrying weight. Legal terms, ownership structures, financial breakdowns. At the top of one page, the same property listing from earlier. But this version wasn't simple. It wasn't surface level. It was detailed, layered, prepared. Elijah's thumb paused on the edge of the paper. He looked at the numbers again, then leaned back slightly. A small breath, not doubt, just timing. Outside, the wind moved lightly across the open space around him. Quiet. He closed the folder, set it down carefully. His hand rested on it for a second longer than necessary. Then he spoke, softly, almost to himself. "I didn't come to ask." A pause. His gaze lifted forward again. "I came ready." And just like that, the silence felt different, not empty, prepared. The glass door slid open without a sound. R.A. met him instantly. Clean, different from the outside. Elijah stepped in, and the shift was immediate. It wasn't loud. It wasn't obvious. But it was there. Conversations slowed, not stopped, just softened. Voices dropped half a level. Heads turned, then turned away too quickly. The kind of attention people pretend they're not giving. Elijah walked forward, his boots meeting the marble floor with quiet, steady weight. The same rhythm, the same pace. He didn't look around right, away, react. But he felt it, the space between people, the way it subtly widened as he passed. A man near the front desk paused mid-sentence, his eyes flicking down briefly before returning to his conversation, though now, distracted. Two agents standing by a glass partition leaned slightly toward each other. "Client?" one whispered. The other shook his head just enough to answer. Elijah reached the center of the room. Then he stopped, not uncertain, just choosing where to go next. A large, digital display hung on the far wall, rotating images of properties. Wide spaces, clean lines, numbers that didn't need explanation. His eyes lifted to it for a second, focused. "Then can I help you?" The voice came sharp. Already carrying assumption. Elijah turned. Daniel Reeves approached with practiced confidence, adjusting the cuff of his shirt as he walked. His steps were smooth, precise. He didn't rush. Need to, this was his space. His eyes scanned Elijah, quickly top, bottom, then back up again. Efficient, dismissive. He didn't offer a handshake. Didn't smile. Just stood there, waiting. Elijah met his gaze. Calm. I'm looking for information on a property, he said. Daniel's brow lifted slightly. Which one? Elijah gestured lightly toward the screen without turning his head. The commercial listing on Westbrook. There was a pause. Daniel's eyes flicked to the screen, then back to Elijah. You mean the development site? He asked. Ah, yes. This one longer. Daniel shifted his weight slightly, one hand sliding into his pocket. That property isn't exactly... He let the sentence hang, then finished it with a faint smile. Entry level. Elijah didn't respond to the tone. I'd still like to discuss it. Daniel exhaled quietly through his nose, almost like a silent laugh. All right, he said slowly. What exactly are you looking to know? Elijah stepped closer to the display, glancing at the rotating image as it. I teft it again. Zoning restrictions, he said. Recent valuation changes. And the current negotiation status. The words landed. Not loudly, but clearly. Daniel's expression didn't change, but something behind his eyes flickered. Then it was gone. He nodded once, slowly. That information is typically shared with serious buyers, he replied. Elijah turned back to him. I understand. Silence stretched between them. A few feet away, Maya looked up from her screen. Her eyes moved between them, just observing. Elijah spoke again. Has there been any adjustment in the asking price over the last quarter? Daniel didn't answer immediately. Instead, he tilted his head slightly, studying Elijah more closely now. Why? He asked. The question wasn't curious. It was probing. Elijah held his gaze. Because I'm interested in the property. A faint sound came from somewhere behind them, a chair shifting. Daniel let out a short breath, nodding again, slower this time. Interested, he repeated. Then he upped closer. Not aggressively, but enough to close the space. And what makes you think this is something you can step into? The words were softer now, but sharper. Elijah didn't move. I haven't said anything about stepping into it, he replied evenly. I asked for information. Daniel's jaw tightened slightly. There it was. The resistance he didn't like. Not loud, not emotional, just steady. He glanced around briefly, noticing a few eyes drifting their way. Then back to Elijah. Look, he said, lowering his voice just enough to make it feel more controlled. We deal with a certain level of client here. Elijah waited. We don't usually walk people through properties like that unless there's a clear understanding. Of what? Elijah asked. Daniel's lips pressed into a thin line. Of capability. The word lingered. Elijah nodded once, then asked, what kind of development proposals have been submitted so far? Daniel blinked. Just once. Not because he didn't understand the question. Because he didn't expect it. That's not public information, he replied quickly. I didn't say public, Elijah said. The room felt quieter now, not silent, but focused. Maya's fingers hovered above her keyboard again, still not typing, just listening. Daniel's patience began to thin, not in his voice yet, but in the way his shoulders tightened slightly. You're asking a lot of detailed questions, he said. Elijah met his gaze. I came prepared. Daniel gave a short, humorless smile. Prepared, he echoed. Then his eyes dropped again to the boots, to the faint dust now marking the edge of the polished floor. He looked back up, and whatever curiosity had briefly appeared, disappeared, replaced by something firmer, more certain. You know what, Daniel said, straightening slightly, his tone shifting. Let's not do this. Elijah didn't move. Do what? He asked. Daniel gestured lightly around them. This, he said. The questions. The back and forth. He took a small step back. Creating space, but not in a welcoming way. In a dismissive one. If you're serious about something like that, he continued, there's a process. Elijah's expression didn't change. I'm asking about the process. Daniel shook his head slowly. No, he said. You're skipping it. The tension tightened. Not loud. Elijah held the silence for a moment, then spoke again. What's the current offer range? Daniel let out a breath, this time more visible, and something in him snapped. Yes, a decision. A judgment already made. That's enough, he said. Not raised, but air shifted. Maya straightened slightly in her seat. Something was about to change. Elijah stood still, watching. And Daniel was already done listening. That's enough. The words didn't echo. They landed, flat. But something in the room shifted the second Daniel said them. Elijah didn't move, didn't step back, didn't argue. He just stood there, looking at Daniel the same way he had from the start, calm, steady, unshaken. That calm, it got under Daniel's skin, more than any argument would have. Daniel straightened his posture, adjusting his sleeve again, but this time the movement wasn't smooth, it was tight. Controlled, you're not listening, he said louder now. This isn't a place where people just walk in and start asking high-level questions like they belong in the room. The words carried. Heads turned fully now, no more pretending. A couple seated near the top their conversation entirely. A man leaning against a desk crossed his arms, watching with open curiosity. Someone near the window smirked faintly, as if they'd seen this kind of thing before. Elijah's voice came again, even. "Oh, I asked about a property." Daniel let out a sharp breath, a short laugh slipping through it. "A property?" he repeated louder now, making sure others heard. "You mean the one worth millions?" A few quiet reactions rippled across the room, not loud. Daniel stepped slightly to the side, gesturing toward Elijah with an open hand. "Look at you," he said. "You walk in here like you're ready to close a deal." Elijah didn't respond, didn't defend himself. That silence stretched the moment, made it heavier. Daniel's expression hardened. "Or what?" he continued. "You thought we wouldn't notice?" The tone shifted again. More personal. "You think dressing like that, walking in off the street, asking questions like that, what does that even mean?" A woman near the front desk shifted uncomfortably, glancing down at her screen. Another agent leaned closer to his colleague, whispering something that ended with a quiet chuckle. Elijah's eyes moved again. Not fast, taking it all in. Every face, every reaction. Maya's chest tightened slightly as she watched. Her fingers pressed lightly into the edge of her desk. Something about this wasn't right, not just the words. The direction it was going. Daniel took another step, outward. Close enough now that the space between them felt deliberate. "You're wasting my time," he said, his voice dropping just enough to carry more weight. And everyone else's. Elijah finally spoke, still calm, still controlled. "If you don't want to answer, just say that." That was it. No accusation. No emotion. Just a line. But it hit something. Daniel's jaw clenched. A small muscle in his cheek tightened. And for a brief second, he lost control of the smooth image he carried so easily. "You don't get to tell me how to do my job," he snapped. The room froze. No one moved. Oh, no one spoke. Daniel's voice had crossed a line now. Not just firm, public, sharp. "You come in here, you ask questions you clearly don't understand, and then you act like what? Like you're owed something?" Elijah didn't step back, didn't flinch. His hands stayed relaxed at his sides. His gaze steady. And that steadiness made everything worse. Daniel's frustration built faster now. "You're pretending," he louder again. "That's what this is. You're pretending to be something you're not." The words hung in the air, heavy, uncomfortable. Someone shifted in their chair. Another person looked away completely now, but still no one stepped in. Elijah's eyes didn't change. But something behind them sharpened, not anger. Awareness. Daniel exhaled sharply, running a hand briefly through his hair before dropping it again. "I don't have time for this," he said. Then, without warning, he reached out. His hand grabbed Elijah's arm. Firm, unnecessary. The contact broke something in the room, not physically, but emotionally. A line crossed. Maya leaned forward instinctively, her chair sliding slightly against the floor with a soft scrape. "Daniel," she started. But the word didn't finish. Daniel was already moving, pulling. Elijah's body shifted with the force, his boots dragging slightly across the polished floor. The sound, low, rough, cut through the silence louder than it should have. Step. Step. Scrape. Every movement felt slower now, stretched, as if the room itself was watching in pieces. Elijah didn't resist, didn't pull away, but he didn't collapse into it either. He moved with it, controlled. His eyes lifted again, and this time they stayed on the people around him, not on Daniel. On them, the ones watching, the ones saying nothing. A man near the glass wall looked down quickly when their eyes met. Another shifted his stance, pretending to check his phone. A couple in the back sat completely still now. No smirks anymore, just silence. Daniel kept walking, his grip tightening as if the lack of resistance somehow irritated him more. "You don't belong here," he muttered, half under his breath, half loud enough for it to carry. The words repeated the earlier tone, but now they hit harder. The door was only a few steps away. Sunlight spilled across the entrance, cutting into the cool tones of the office. Daniel pushed it open with his shoulder. Swung wide. And then one final shove. Elijah stumbled forward, just slightly. His boot caught the edge of the threshold. For a split second, his balance tipped. The room held its breath, but he didn't fall. He steadied himself, straightened. The city noise rushed in again, breaking the sealed quiet of the office. Daniel stood at the doorway, brushing his hands together like he'd just finished dealing with something unpleasant. "Unbelievable," he muttered. Aft slipped out. Then another. Uncertain. But enough to fill the space. Inside, people began shifting again, returning to their seats, their screens, their conversations, like it was over. like it was nothing, but Maya didn't move. Her eyes stayed fixed on the door, on Elijah. He hadn't walked away yet. He stood there for a moment, just outside the glass, still. Then slowly, he turned his head. Not fully, just enough to look back. His eyes met the room again. Calm, unshaken. It didn't match what had just happened. Not at all. Daniel frowned slightly, a flicker of confusion crossing his face. "What?" he said, irritation creeping back into his tone. "You still here?" A beat passed. Then Elijah spoke, softly. "You might want to remember this moment. No anger, no emphasis, just words." But they landed differently now. He didn't wait for a response. He turned and walked away. The door closed slowly behind him. Click. Inside, the office breathed again. Louder this time, faster, as if trying to erase what had just happened. Daniel stepped back in, adjusting his cuffs again. "Every day," he muttered, shaking his head. "Something like this." A colleague laughed lightly. "You handled it." "Of course I did," Daniel replied quickly. "You have to." But his voice wasn't as smooth now. Not quite. Across the room, Maya sat frozen, her eyes still on the door, her mind replaying the moment. Not the shouting, not the dragging. Silence. The control. Those last words. They didn't sound like anger. They didn't sound like defeat. They sounded like something else. Something she couldn't ignore. And for the first time since it all started, she felt it. Something was wrong. Not with what happened, but with what they all assumed it meant. The office didn't stay quiet for long. Silence never lasted there. It shifted, or covered itself. Within minutes, keyboards started clicking again. Phones rang. Conversations came back, but louder this time. Faster. As if noise could erase what just happened. Daniel leaned back against his desk, rolling his shoulders once, like shaking off something minor. "Crazy," he said, letting out a small laugh. "You see that?" A few people nearby nodded. "Guy walks in like he owns the place." One of. I added. Daniel smirked. "Yeah, asking about Westbrook like it's pocket change." Another voice chimed in. "You get those sometimes." Daniel shook his head slowly, almost amused. Not like that. He really thought he was about to sit down and negotiate. A couple of light chuckles spread. Not loud, but enough to create agreement, to settle the moment into something normal. Something justified. Daniel picked up his glass again, taking a slow sip. "You have to read people," he said, tapping the side of the glass lightly. "That's the job. You can tell in the first 10 seconds who's serious and who's not." Someone nodded. "Exactly. And if you don't cut it early," Daniel continued, "you waste time. And in this business, time is everything." No one challenged him. No one questioned it. The room moved on. But not everyone. Maya sat at her desk, her screen glowing in front of her, untouched. Her fingers rested on the keyboard but didn't move. Her eyes were still, focused, not on the present. It didn't sit right. Not the way Daniel was acting like it was nothing. Not the way everyone else accepted it so easily. She exhaled slowly, then turned slightly toward her screen. A decision forming. Quiet. Careful. She clicked into the system. Scrolled. Her fingers began to move slowly at first, then more deliberately. Search field. Cursor blinking. She typed, "Jakarta." For a second, nothing. Then the system loaded. A file appeared. I get. The screen changed, and her posture shifted. Not dramatically, just enough. Her eyes narrowed slightly as she leaned closer. There it was. Inquiry. Logged. Timestamped. Earlier that morning. Property. Westbrook commercial site. Her breath slowed. She scrolled down. Attached documents. Initial request. Financial interest category. Not blank. Not incomplete. Detailed. Her fingers hovered again, then moved. She opened one of the attachments. Numbers filled the screen. Eye organized. Not random. Not guesswork. Her chest tightened slightly. This wasn't someone guessing. This was someone who knew what they were looking at. She glanced up. Across the room, Daniel was still talking, laughing lightly with another agent, completely at ease, completely certain. Maya looked back at the screen, then back at Daniel. The thought pushed forward. She stood up, not fast, but with purpose. "Daniel," she said, her voice calm but firm enough to cut through the nearby noise. Turned slightly, eyebrows lifting. "Yeah?" She walked over, holding her tablet in one hand. "I think you should look at something." Daniel sighed lightly, already half turning back toward his desk. "If it's about that guy it is." That made him pause. Just for a second. Then he turned fully. Maya stepped closer, angling the screen toward him. "There's an inquiry," she said. "Under his name." Daniel glanced at it, briefly, then shrugged. "People send inquiries all the time," he said. "I mean anything." Maya didn't pull the screen back. "Look at the details." A beat. Daniel exhaled, more out of impatience than interest, and leaned slightly to look closer. His eyes scanned the screen, quick, then slower. Then he straightened. "Anyone can put numbers on a form," he said, his tone shifting slightly, more defensive now. "Doesn't make it real." Maya held his gaze. "These aren't random numbers." Daniel's jaw tightened. He didn't like this. Not the tone. Not the implication. "You're overthinking it," he said. "Trust me, I've seen this before." Maya didn't respond immediately. Just watched him. Then said quietly he asked about zoning restrictions. Daniel scoffed lightly. "So? That's not a guess question." A small silence fell between them. Then Daniel shook his head. "It doesn't matter," he said. "Even if he read something online, even if he picked up a few terms, it doesn't change anything." Maya's grip on the tablet tightened slightly. "But what if it doesn't?" Daniel cut in. His voice sharper now. Final. He stepped back, putting distance between them again. "Drop it," he added, turning away. And just like that, the conversation ended. At least for him. Maya stood there for a second longer, then slowly turned back toward her desk. But she didn't sit right away. Her eyes drifted again to the door. Then to her screen. Something didn't match, and she couldn't ignore it. Outside, far from the glass and polished floors, Elijah stood beside his truck. Again, the city noise felt distant now. Less important. He opened the passenger door, pulling out one of the folders. Not rushed. Focused. He leaned against the side of the truck, flipping it open. Pages turned, one by one. Each one familiar, each one already considered. His phone buzzed. He glanced at it. A name flashed on the screen. He answered. He's scanning the document again. "They're slow," he said after a moment. "Too comfortable." Another pause, then a faint shift in his tone. Not emotional. Decisive. "We move forward." The wind moved lightly around him, carrying dust across the ground. On the other end, a voice spoke again. Elijah nodded once. "Everything's in place." He closed the folder, held it for a second, then added, "Start the process." Silence followed. Then the call ended. Elijah lowered the phone slowly. His gaze lifted, not toward the office, not anymore. Forward. Back. The office energy had settled completely. Deals continued. Phones rang. Confidence filled the space again. Unshaken, untouched. But in a quiet office somewhere across the city, a different conversation was happening. A man in a dark suit sat at a large desk, flipping through a file. His expression wasn't relaxed. It was focused, precise. He reached the final page, paused, then leaned back slightly. "Why wasn't this brought to me earlier?" he asked. Across from him, an assistant shifted, tightly. "We were waiting on confirmation from the agency." The man's eyes narrowed. "They've had enough time." A beat passed. Then he closed the file. "Firm. Set up a direct line," he said. The assistant nodded quickly. "And the agency?" she asked. The man's expression didn't change. "They've had their chance. Back in the real estate office, no one felt it yet. No one saw it coming. The phones kept ringing. The deals kept moving. The confidence stayed intact, but something had already. I shifted. Quietly. Precisely. And it was moving faster than anyone inside that glass office understood. The office felt different that afternoon. Not loud. Not chaotic. Just tighter. Like something unseen had shifted the air. Maya stared at her screen again. The same file still open. The same numbers sitting there unchanged, but heavier now. The more she looked at them, the less they felt like coincidence. Her fingers tapped lightly against the desk, then stopped. Enough. She stood up again. There was no hesitation. "Daniel." Her voice carried farther than before. Not loud, but steady. Daniel didn't turn immediately. He was mid-conversation, leaning casually against a desk, explaining something with a relaxed smile. "It's all about reading the client, Daniel." He stopped, slowly turned. There was a slight edge in his expression now. Not curiosity. Annoyance. "What?" he said. Maya walked toward him, tablet in hand again. But this time her steps were firmer. "I need you. I'll look at this properly." A few nearby conversations quieted. Not completely, just enough. Daniel exhaled, clearly unimpressed. "We already went through this." "No," Maya said. "You glanced at it." A pause. That tone, it didn't sit well with him. "All right," he said, pushing himself off the desk. "Show me." Maya held the screen up. Closer this time. Daniel leaned in slightly. His eyes moved across the page again. Faster at first, then slower, then stopping. The shift was subtle, invisible, but it was there. A flicker. Maya saw it. "You see it?" she asked quietly. Daniel straightened up immediately. Too quickly. "Anyone can write numbers," he said again, but this time the confidence didn't land the same way. Maya didn't respond right away. She tapped the screen. "This isn't just numbers," she said. Look at the structure. Look at the breakdown. Daniel's jaw tightened. I said it doesn't matter. But it does, Maya pressed, her voice still controlled, but firmer now. I wasn't guessing. He knew what he was asking. A couple of agents nearby glanced over now, more openly. The tension was no longer hidden. Daniel felt it, and he didn't like it. You're making this bigger than it is, he said, sharper now. Maya held her ground. What if it already is? That line hung there, heavy, uncomfortable. Daniel's eyes locked onto hers. For a second, he didn't have a response, and that second, it showed. Maya saw it, so did the others watching. Daniel recovered quickly, quickly. He shook his head, letting out a short breath. No, he said. This is exactly what I'm talking about. You're overthinking. That's how people get distracted in this business. Maya didn't move. He asked about zoning restrictions. I've heard that before. He asked about valuation changes over a quarter. Daniel's eyes narrowed slightly. So? That's not random. Silence. A real one this time. Daniel looked at the screen again, just for a moment. Then back at her. His expression hardened. No, he said again. I know what I saw, and I know what that was. Maya lowered the tablet slightly. And what if you're wrong? The question landed differently, not challenging, not loud, just direct. Daniel's lips pressed together. That word wrong, it didn't fit anywhere in his world. I'm not, he said flat. And just like that, he shut the door on it. Completely. Maya studied him for a second longer, then slowly nodded. Not agreeing, just acknowledging, and she stepped back. But the tension didn't leave. It stayed, lingering. Across the office, a phone rang, then another. But this time, the calls didn't feel routine. There was urgency in them, subtle, but growing. An assistant hurried across the room, her heels clicking faster than usual. Daniel, she called out, her voice slightly tight. There's a call for you. Daniel turned, irritation still lingering. From who? Senior management. That made him pause, just for a second. Then he straightened, tightly. Put it through. He walked toward his desk, picking up the receiver with controlled ease. Daniel Reeves, a beat. His expression didn't change at first. Then slowly, it did. His posture shifted, not dramatically, just enough. Yes, he said. Another pause. His eyes flicked briefly across the room, then back down. I understand. The call ended. He didn't move immediately, just stood there. Then he placed the receiver down carefully. Too carefully. What is it, someone asked. Daniel didn't answer right away. They're calling a meeting, he said finally. About what? He hesitated. Then the Westbrook property. The room shifted again. That name carried weight. Always had. What about it? Another voice asked. Daniel shook his head slightly. They didn't say, but his tone, it wasn't confident anymore. Not fully. Something was off. Everyone felt it. No one understood it. Miles away, far from glass walls and quiet tension, Elijah stood on open land, wide, unrestricted. The kind of space that didn't close in on you. The wind moved freely here, carrying dust and sunlight across the ground. He stood near the edge of a large stretch of earth, his boots pressing into soil that felt familiar, natural. His phone was at his ear. Yes, he said. A pause. His gaze moved slowly across the land. Not with tools. I've reviewed everything. Another pause. The wind picked up slightly, brushing against his jacket. Then he spoke. Again. Decisive. Let's finalize it. Silence followed on the other end. Then a response. Confirmed. Elijah lowered the phone. His eyes stayed on the horizon. Nothing was uncertain. Behind him, the land stretched further. Untouched. Full of potential. In front of him, the future was already moving. Back in the office, the air had changed completely now. The usual rhythm was gone, replaced by something tighter, heavier. People spoke in lower tones, moved, core, glanced at each other more often. The meeting hadn't even started yet, but the pressure was already building. Daniel adjusted his tie slightly, his reflection staring back at him from the glass wall. For the first time that day, it didn't feel perfect. It didn't feel certain. And somewhere, deep under everything he was telling himself, a small thought tried to surface. Quiet, unwelcome. What if he pushed it down? Immediately. Number. He knew what he saw. He knew how to read people. He always had. He always would. But the room didn't feel like it agreed anymore. And the silence that followed didn't feel empty. It felt like something waiting. The meeting room felt colder than the rest of the office. Not because of the temperature, because of the silence. Chairs were filled. Screens were open. Pens rested untouched against notebooks. No one leaned back. No one relaxed. At the head of the table, a senior manager stood with a file in his hand, flipping one last page before closing it. The sound echoed louder than it should have. Daniel sat halfway down the table, his posture straight, hands clasped loosely in front of him. His face looked composed, but the tension sat in his jaw. Maya sat across from him. Still, watching, the manager looked up. "We've received an update regarding the Westbrook property." Every eye in the room lifted. That name again. He paused, just long enough to let the weight settle. The deal has been closed. A ripple moved through the room. Not loud, but immediate. "What?" Someone whispered. "That's not possible," another voice added quietly. Daniel leaned forward slightly. "By who?" The manager's expression didn't change. "An independent buyer." Silence followed, thicker now. Confusion spread quickly, but no one spoke over each other. It stayed controlled, but the tension beneath it was clear. "That doesn't make sense," one agent said. "Deals at that level don't just happen like that." "They do," the manager replied, calmly. "When the buyer doesn't need the middle." That line landed hard. A few people shifted in their seats. Daniel's fingers tightened slightly. "Who is it?" he asked. The manager didn't answer immediately. Instead, he placed the file down on the table, opened it again, turned it slightly so it faced the room. Then he said the name, Elijah Carter. Everything stopped, not just quiet, stopped. Like the air itself had been pulled out of the room. Maya didn't blink. Her eyes moved slowly, across the table, to Daniel. He didn't react right away. Not visibly, but something in his face shifted. A crack, small, but real. That's someone started, then stopped. "No," another voice said, shaking their head. "That's not it is," the manager cut in. Flat, low. The file remained open. The name sat there, clear, unmistakable. Elijah Carter. Daniel leaned back slightly, his mind trying to catch up to something it didn't want to accept. "That's the same guy from earlier," someone said, quietly. No one needed confirmation. They all knew. The boots, the questions, the silence. Maya's gaze stayed on Daniel. He felt it, but didn't look at her. Instead, he let out a short breath, shaking his head once. "There's no way," he said. "That doesn't add up." No one responded, because now it did. The questions, the file, the inquiry, everything Maya had seen, everything he had dismissed. Daniel leaned forward again, more tense this time. "How did this happen?" he asked. The manager closed. "I'll." "Direct acquisition," he said. "Through external channels." Another pause. "Then he didn't need us." That line hit differently, not just information. A statement. Daniel's throat tightened slightly. He shifted in his seat, trying to hold on to something solid. "This doesn't change anything," he said, his voice controlled but thinner now. "We didn't have a formal engagement. There was no signed intent he came into this office," Maya said quietly. Her voice cut through everything. Not loud, but precise. Daniel finally looked at her. Their eyes met. And for a second, neither of them spoke. Maya didn't need to say more. The room already understood. The manager cleared his throat slightly. "There's more." All eyes turned back to him. He picked up another document. "Mr. Carter has requested a meeting." The words settled slowly. "A meeting?" someone repeated. "With us?" another asked. The manager nodded once. "Yes." The room shifted again, but this time it wasn't confusion. It was something else. Fairness. Daniel leaned back again, his fingers pressing lightly into the table. "For what?" he asked. The manager looked directly at him. He didn't specify. A pause. Then, but the request was clear. Another silence. Longer. He closed the document again. "He'll be here tomorrow." The weight of that landed differently. Not like news. Like impact. Daniel swallowed slightly, his mind racing faster now. Trying to rebuild control. Trying to find footing. "This could be an odd negotiation," he said quickly. "Or maybe he wants advisory support after acquisition. That happens." No one responded, because his voice didn't sound certain anymore. It sounded like he was trying to convince himself. Maya watched him carefully. Every movement, every shift, the confidence he carried earlier, it wasn't gone. But it wasn't steady either. Cracks were forming, small, but visible. The manager gathered the files. "Be prepared," he said simply. Then he left the room. No dramatic exit. No added pressure. Just that one line. "Be prepared." The door closed behind him. Soft. Final. Inside, no one moved for a moment. Then chairs shifted. Quiet conversation started. Low. Controlled. But different. Everything felt different now. Daniel stood up slowly, adjusted his jacket, straightened his posture. Rebuilding. Piece by piece. "It's fine," he said, more to the room than anyone specific. "We'll handle it." No one challenged him, but no one agreed either. Maya stood up too. Her tablet, IT in her hand. Her eyes still on him. She didn't say anything this time. She didn't need to. The truth was already in the room. And tomorrow it was walking back through the door, not as someone being removed, but as someone being expected. And for the first time since this started, the power had shifted. Completely. The doors opened again. Same glass, same quiet slide. But this time no one spoke. No one moved. The moment Elijah Carter stepped inside, the entire room felt it. Not shock. Confusion. Recognition. He walked in the same way he had before. Same boots, same calm steps, same steady posture. Nothing about him had changed, but everything about the room had. Conversations stopped completely this time. Not faded, stopped. Heads turned openly. No pretending. No whispers. Just silence. A heavy, waiting silence. Elijah didn't rush. Didn't look around immediately. He let the space settle first. Then his eyes lifted. Slow. Measured. He saw them. All of them. The same faces. The made desks. The same place that had pushed him out like he didn't belong. But this time no one came forward to stop him. No one questioned him. No one even stepped in his path. They moved slightly instead, creating space, without being told. Across the room, Maya stood near her desk. Her hands rested lightly at her sides, her shoulders still, her eyes fixed on him. There was no doubt in her expression now, only confirmation. Elijah kept walking, straight toward the center, toward the same spot. Everything had started. And then he stopped. Daniel stood a few feet away, frozen. Not physically, but mentally. His posture was upright, but his shoulders carried tension now. His hands weren't relaxed anymore. His expression wasn't controlled. It was trying to be, but it wasn't working. Elijah looked at him, not aggressively, not accusing, just directly. You, he started, but the word didn't go anywhere. Elijah didn't interrupt. He waited. Daniel cautioned a little, trying to recover something familiar. We received your request for a meeting, he said, his voice careful, measured. Elijah nodded once. I appreciate you making the time. The words were simple, professional, but they carried something else. Control. Daniel gestured slightly, almost instinctively. We can talk in my office. Elijah's gaze didn't shift. I'd prefer to speak here. A pause. No one moved. The room understood what that meant. Daniel hesitated, then nodded. All right. The air tightened. Elijah took one step closer, not invading space, just enough to be heard clearly. I came in yesterday with a question, he said. His voice was calm, even, every word placed carefully. Daniel nodded once, quickly. And there was a misunderstanding. Elijah raised his hand slightly, not aggressively, just enough. Daniel stopped, mid-sentence. Moss returned. I came in prepared, Elijah continued. I knew the property. I understood the value. I asked specific, questions. Each sentence landed clean. No emotion, just fact. Daniel's jaw tightened. A few people shifted slightly, but no one spoke. Elijah's eyes moved briefly. Around the room, then back to Daniel. I wasn't asking for permission, he said. I was asking for information. A small pause. Then, but I understand now why that didn't happen. The line hung there, heavy. Daniel opened his mouth slightly, but nothing came out. For the first time, he didn't have control of the moment. Elijah. I reached into his jacket, slowly, pulled out a folder, the same kind, clean. He held it for a second, then extended it toward Daniel. Daniel hesitated, then took it. His fingers felt tighter than they should have. He opened it, pages filled with detail, contracts, ownership confirmations, financial structures. His eyes moved across them, faster, then slower. Then he stopped. The realization hit, not loudly, but completely. Elijah watched him. Still, you asked what made me. I could step into something like that, Elijah said. Daniel didn't look up. Not yet. I didn't think. Elijah continued. I knew. A quiet shift moved through the room. People leaned slightly forward. Not intentionally, just drawn in. Elijah's voice didn't rise. Didn't need to. The property has been acquired, he said, through channels that didn't require introduction. Daniel finally looked up. His expression different now. Not confident, not dismissive, uncertain. Elijah met his gaze, held it, and then continued. I built what I needed before I walked in here, he said. I structured the deal. I secured the capital. I finalized the terms. Each line stripped away assumption, piece by piece. I wasn't hoping to be taken seriously, he added. A pause. I already was. The room stayed silent. No movement. No interruption. Just wait. Daniel's grip on the folder tightened slightly. He looked down again, then back up, trying to find something. Anything. Odd information, he said, his voice lower now. Elijah nodded once. That's clear. Not harsh. Not forgiving. Just true. Daniel inhaled slowly. "You have to understand I do," Elijah said, cutting him off again. "Oh, I understand exactly what happened." Another pause. Elijah stepped slightly to the side, just enough to break the direct line. His gaze moved across the room again. Then back. "Yesterday," he said, "I was evaluated before I spoke." A few eyes dropped. No one argued. Elijah's tone didn't change. "I was dismissed before I was heard." Silence deepened. "And I was removed before I was understood." The words settled fully now. No space left around them. Daniel didn't respond. Couldn't. Elijah let the moment sit. Didn't rush it. Didn't fill it. Then he spoke again. Quieter this time, but sharper. "You didn't lose a client," he said. A small pause. "Then you lost an opportunity you didn't even understand." The line landed. In final, Daniel's shoulders popped slightly. Not dramatically, but enough to show it. The weight, the realization. He had nothing to say. Nothing that would fix it. Nothing that would change it. The room stayed still. No applause. No reaction. Just understanding. Elijah didn't wait for one. He closed the space again with a single step back. Reclaiming distance. Control. Then he turned slightly. Not away. Just enough to end it. His presence had already done what it needed to do. He didn't need to stay. Anger. As he walked toward the door, no one moved in his way. Not out of fear. Out of awareness. The same path. The same floor. The same exit, but completely different. He reached the door. Paused, just for a second. Not to look back. Not to say more. Just a breath. Then he stepped out, and the door closed behind him. Final. Inside no one spoke, because for the first time they all understood exactly what had happened. The door stayed closed long after he left. No one rushed to open it. No one even looked at it right away. The room held its silence like it meant something now, different from before, heavier, real. Daniel was still standing where Elijah had left him. The folder in his hands felt heavier than paper should. His fingers hadn't loosened around it. His posture hadn't adjusted. But something inside him had. Across the room, no one spoke. Not because they didn't have anything to say, because nothing felt appropriate anymore. The same people who had laughed earlier avoided eye contact. A man near the window shifted his stance, looking down at his phone without really seeing it. Another agent cleared his throat quietly, then stopped himself as if even that sound didn't belong. Maya didn't move. Her eyes rested on Daniel, not with anger, not with satisfaction, just clarity. The truth had already settled. Daniel finally exhaled. Slow. Uneven. He looked down at the folder again. Opened it. The same pages stared back at him, unchanged, but now undeniable. I flicked one page, then another, each detail confirming what he had refused to see. He closed it, carefully, then placed it on the desk in front of him. No one commented. No one asked anything, because they all understood what it meant. Not just the deal. The mistake, and the cost of it. The shift didn't happen loudly. It didn't need to. Over the next few days, the office moved differently. Conversations were more measured, reactions slower. People paid attention in ways they hadn't before. Daniel still came in the same time every morning, still dressed the same, still carried himself with that familiar structure. But something was missing. Not confidence, not completely, but certainty. It didn't sit as firmly as it used to. When he spoke, people listened, but differently. Not with automatic agreement, with thought. He noticed it, even if no one said it. Small things began to change. Clients were reassigned. Meetings shifted. Decisions that once passed, easily, now moved around him. Not aggressively, not publicly, but clearly. And Daniel, he didn't argue, didn't push back, because deep down he understood why. Maya's desk didn't move. Her role didn't change on paper. But the way people spoke to her did. When she talked, others listened. Not because she demanded it, because she had seen what others ignored. One afternoon, a senior manager stopped by her desk. Simple, direct, "You did the right thing." He didn't stay long. Make it a moment. Just said it and walked away. Maya sat there quietly afterward, not smiling, not reacting, just absorbing it, because she hadn't done it for recognition. She had done it because something didn't feel right, and she chose not to ignore it. The city moved on. Deals closed. Phones rang. Glass walls stayed polished. But that moment it stayed, not as noise, as memory. A quiet reminder sitting beneath everything. Far from the office, the land stretched wide again, open, unrestricted. The same place Elijah had stood before, but it felt different now. Not because the land had changed, because the scale had. New markers stood across the property, subtle signs of planning, structure. Movement. Elijah walked along the edge, his boots pressing into the soil with that same steady rhythm. Nothing about him had changed. Same pace, same calm presence. But the space around him, it had grown. A vehicle moved in the distance. Workers measured sections of land. Voices hurried faintly through the open air. Not chaotic, organized, intentional. Elijah stopped near a point overlooking the wider stretch. His hands rested at his sides. His eyes moved across everything, not rushed, not scanning, understanding. A man approached from behind holding a clipboard. "We've confirmed the first phase," he said. Elijah nodded once. "Good. Timeline looks solid." Elijah didn't respond immediately. He took a breath, let the wind move around him, then said, "Start with foundation." The man nodded and walked off. Elijah remained where he was. His gaze stayed forward, not on what had happened, on what was next. The past didn't need revisiting. It had already done its part. Back in the office, someone new walked through the doors. Different face, different story. But this time the room didn't react the same way. No quick glances, no quiet assumptions, just awareness, just attention. And somewhere in the room Maya noticed a small shift. But the sun began to lower over the land, casting long shadows across the ground. Elijah stood there, watching it settle. No rush, no urgency, just quiet control. He reached into his pocket, pulling out a folded paper, the same one, worn at the edges, the original listing. He looked at it for a moment, then folded it again, carefully, put it back, not as something needed, as something remembered. The wind moved again, soft, steady, wagon toward, not to prove anything, not to revisit anything, just to continue. Because some people don't need to explain who they are. They build it, step by step, quietly, until the world has no choice but to see it. And when that moment comes, they don't raise their voice. They don't look back. They just keep moving and let the results speak for them.